Not yet begun. This call will be disconnected. Please dial in again when the webinar begins.
Is this Sridhar?
Yes.
How are you? You want me to start?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, good evening, everybody. This is Rajkot. Thank you again very much for joining us, and Sridhar, thanks again for arranging this conference for us. I am pretty sure you have you know what this is about, so we will make it as interactive as possible. I'll go through some slides, and then I will open up the presentation for questions. I think you can type in your questions, and then Sridhar will call out the questions, and then we can. I will answer as many questions as as you want me to. Couple of administrative things first. That if you want a free copy of this presentation emailed to you, please register your name and email address at this address. It's fairly easy, or if you don't have a pen and pencil handy, you can just go to Google and just type in IUCEE Raw Advisors, and you will get this partner link. Okay, so let us start. So first of all, we are a US-based firm, and we've been doing this for 3 years now. We have worked with IUCEE for at least 2 years now, and we bring a different aspect to the whole idea of how to select colleges, and we want to kind of bring you up to speed on what is going on in the US, and so that we can talk a little bit about why you need to think differently, and that's what we will do today. So clearly, the US is the global hub of higher education, which is the reason I suppose so many of you want to go to the US for higher studies, and there are lots of advantages. Some of them are listed here. The most important, of course, is that English is the only language needed, and also most of the US universities are highly well rated, so that you will have lots of interesting internship and job opportunities when you graduate. Is everything okay? Yeah. Okay, there has been an explosion in the number of students going to the US. Since 2001, nearly 265% is the growth of students going to the US. So this is incredible. And as you know, Chinese and Indians, we dominate the STEM fields. And most STEM graduates do very well, right? Once you graduate with a master's degree or a PhD, most of us do very well in the US in terms of lifetime earnings. And for those of you who are used to more of a rote learning engineering environment, you will find that US higher education is very different. There's a lot of focus on teamwork, and it's very entrepreneurial. Really, you're tested on what you know, and oftentimes when you don't know, you're expected to go to the library, research stuff, and be original. You'll be treated as a professional because once you graduate uh, with your Bachelor's of Engineering degree, you are considered a professional and you will be treated as such. So no more hand-holding, no more sharing of notes between students. Your work is respected, and it is expected that you do original work. And you will also learn to listen to what other people are saying. There are lots of intelligent and smart people who come there from all over the world. So you will learn from others, you will learn from your professors, and most importantly, you will learn to communicate. That is one thing that I believe is a current flaw in engineering education in India. Most of us do not know how to express ourselves, and the American education system is very good at challenging you to express yourself. So really, 1.5 years or 2 years after you go there, the way you look at problems is different. It gives you confidence, and you are a really changed individual. And this I have seen, this we have seen repeatedly in students whom we have counseled over the last 3 years. So in the US, everything is based on credit hours, and typically a US university requires you to complete 30 credit hours before you graduate, and a single course is usually worth 3 credit hours. So to graduate, you have to complete 10 courses to get a master's degree. In some cases, it might be 11 courses because the requirement is 33. In some extreme cases, the requirement could be 36. But in general, 30 is a decent number to plan for. And the way the credit hour math works is it's very different from what it is in India. Essentially, a credit hour is defined in this manner. You earn 3 credit hours when you sit through a semester of classes, typically 16 or 17 weeks. And you spend 3 hours engaged with the professor in class, 3 hours a week. So 3 times 16 is 48, or 3 times 17 is 51. So essentially you spend 51 hours of work engaging with the professor, listening to lectures, being in labs with him, whatever. And for every 3 hours of work that you do with the professor in class on campus, the expectation is that you will have to put in about 9 hours of work, either preparing for the class or doing homework, assignments, projects, lab reports, whatever, right? Preparing for tests. So all of us like pizza. So think of it as a quarter slice of the pizza is the professor, and 3/4 of the slice is what you contribute to your development. And the way it's very defined. I know when I went to engineering college here, the exam schedule was very flexible. We would have lots of postponements and so on. That is something that never happens in the US. Everything happens like a German train system. The fall semester starts the 4th week of August, runs for 16 or 17 weeks. Then you have a 3 or 4 week Christmas break. Then the spring semester, which is usually the longest semester, 17 and a half weeks, will run from the 3rd week of January to the 2nd week of May, and then you will have the summer semester, but most of us never study in the summer, preferring instead to obtain an internship. And so if you do the math from the previous slide, if you take uh, three courses in the fall, and then you take 3 courses in the spring, so by the time you enter the summer, your first summer, you're really 60% done. And then if you're lucky enough to get an internship, then you spend away the summer working somewhere and making and really learning a lot. Internships, you will probably learn more in the internship than what you've learned the first 2 semesters. You will make excellent contacts, and you'll network with people. And hopefully, by the time when you come back to school for the fall, for the second fall semester, you will already have a job offer, and that is the ideal scenario. Then you will take 3 more courses in the fall semester, the second fall semester, so now you are 90% done. And then after the second Christmas break, you really only have 1 more course to complete in the spring semester. So some people break it up into 2 and 2, so they take 2 courses in the fall and 2 courses in the second spring. Regardless, they graduate, and now hopefully they'll have a job offer, in which case they wish goodbye to the university and go and start working. And the visa requirements now are very relaxed for STEM graduates, and so it is fun to look ahead and see what happens when you actually graduate. The US is a very expensive country to study. It is the second most expensive country in the world after Australia, and this has not deterred the number of students who want to go there. As I said, this year, according to the Doors report, there were 135,000 students who went to the US to study. So that's a lot of students going there. And if you go to Texas A&M, which is a school that is not very far from where we live, the costs these are the costs. So remember, we just talked about the credit hour math. So I have shown the red bars here for the engineering discipline in the horizontal axis. So there are several schools within Texas A&M. You have agriculture, maybe you have education. I don't know. I don't really know all the 2-letter codes, but EN represents engineering. So that's the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis where you have the red rectangle is 9, and 9 represents 9 credit hours. So for 3 courses, the cost is in the intersection, and that is 6,988. Now this is the cost for 3 courses. So college in the US is very expensive. The latest exchange rate is about 67 rupees to $1. So you can do the math. It can get pretty expensive, right? So if you do 6988 times 67, we're talking of nearly 4.7 lakhs for just 1 semester, and this only includes this only talks about tuition. We haven't talked about all the other costs, which obviously your college housing, your food, your health insurance, your transportation. So you have to be prepared to spend somewhere in the order of 35 to 40 lakhs for a full master's program. Now, I'm not saying that you will actually spend 40 lakhs or 35 lakhs. Many of you are very smart, so you will probably get an internship. And when you do that, if you start paying down your loan, that will help you. Some of you might be able to get an assistantship in the second year, because of your performance in the first 2 semesters. And again, the cost is not going to change, but on the revenue side, there are opportunities for you to help pay down your debt. You should also be mindful of what many universities say. They say that they're giving you a scholarship, but don't fall for that. The best example that I use, we have counseled nearly 10,000 students in the last 3 years in seminars, webinars, workshops, and individual counseling sessions. And the best example I give parents and students like you is that this is very similar to what you find when you go to a mall during Diwali. So typically what the mall guy does is he raises the price the previous day, and then on the day of Diwali he will give you 30% off. So I'm not saying this will happen online, but I'm talking about brick and mortar stores. That's exactly what they do, right? So that is what these guys do. So they jack up the price, and then they say that they're offering you a 20 or 30% discount, and they don't call it discount because they don't want to demean the integrity of the institution. But but really that's what it is, and they'll try to say scholarship, because then you will go rah and say, oh my God, I got a scholarship at this school, so let me go attend that school. Don't fall for it. The standard rule that we all used to follow, going up to Dr. Krishna Vedula, who is the chair of IUCEE, is that the only scholarship that matters is one that is 100%. Anything that's not 100% scholarship is not a scholarship. Okay, so that's just a rule of thumb. Remember, higher education is big business in the U.S. So it's a $31 billion export machine. So there is no incentive for any university to cut their tuition when they can get full price. So in terms of financial resources, a lot of people ask us this question, and the blunt answer is that, again, I go back to this slide. It's a big business, right? So there is no incentive for for a university to provide a scholarship. Now, there are always exceptions. I don't know how many IIT students are here in the audience. Typically, IIT students and NIT students do get some kind of tuition waiver, maybe even an assistantship. But for most of the rest of us who are not privileged enough to have gone to an IIT or an IT, it's rather hard to get funding. And the reason for that is very simple, and I know I'll get a lot of questions about this, so I'm going to spend a couple of extra minutes talking about this. Ultimately, tuition waivers and assistantships are a function of supply and demand. When you have 450 to 500 Indian students, your seniors, who are fighting for that, that small chance of a scholarship or a student or some kind of financial aid, and they're already on campus and they've already taken courses and they already know the department leads and the department professors, you ask yourself meaningfully, why in the world would they give you a scholarship when you're 9,000 miles away and all they know about you is a statement of purpose or a personal statement, right? So, and this is the American way. You have to go there, you have to prove yourself, and if you're the lucky few, you might get some kind of merit scholarship in the second year of your study. Okay, so now that is the reason I have advocated that every one of you has to think about what happens to you after you leave campus, especially when you go get an internship or when you get a job. So you have to be mindful of all of the various visa laws that are constantly changing. So there are lots of very strict on-campus work restrictions. You can only work on campus for some number of hours a week, and you're forbidden to work outside when that is off campus, right? And the thing is, if you start working there in the library, in the computer center, in the cafeteria, wherever, if you find a job and start working, be mindful that that is not the reason you went there. You went there to study. So yes, it looked great to earn $6, $7, $8 an hour, but every hour that you work is an hour that you're not studying. And it's a lot more efficient to channel your time to studying and doing well and getting that very prized internship, because getting an internship is almost a sure-footed way to get a job or to getting a job, right? So you have to, when I counsel students, I always tell them that the first semester is by far the most critical, okay? So the visa rules are pretty tough in the US, and I'm sure you guys have been following the debate. I've written about it extensively. Those of you who want to follow my writing, you can go to Hindu. I write for the Hindu business line regularly, and so I've written about this problem. There is a major issue about visas, and this is not me talking. These are all students who are complaining on this slide. So these are testimonials from your friends who went to the US a couple of years ago and who are complaining that the immigration policies are very restrictive. I urge you to look and read and see the frustration of these people who are on the ground. Okay, so don't take anything for granted. So the reason that we started this firm 3 years ago is that we have seen repeatedly that most Indian students make many costly mistakes during the admissions process. So most of you are, you've had a fairly structured way to this point. I mean, obviously everyone's case is different, but most of you graduated out of 12th, and you probably passed some kind of a state board exam, and you took some kind of state engineering exam, that tested your skills in physics, chemistry, math. And in Karnataka, that exam is called CET, and there are equivalents of CET in practically every state. And based on the average of your CET score and your board exams, some bureaucratic office called the CET cell will assign you a rank, and based on your CET rank, you are just awarded admission. And so for most of you, you never really had to fight for admission. Your marks got you admission into the college that you are in, and into the discipline that you are in, and into the location of the college that you are in. The US higher education process could not be more different. I mean, everything about the US higher education admissions process is 100% different. I mean, if this is East, that is West. Because here you have to market yourself. There is an objective part of the application, which is, by objective I mean things that most of us Indians and Chinese and other Asians are familiar with. These are things we can put a number on, like your grades, your GPA, or your GRE score, or your total score. These are all again numbers. So we love numbers. Indians have been trained to like numbers, and so there is that part, the objective part. But most American schools also want to look at who you are, and 9,000 miles away, they look at the subjective pieces of the application, where you can differentiate yourself, where you write about your resume, your cover letter, the kinds of recommendation letters that you can get. The statement of purpose is probably the most important part of your application process. In fact, application package is probably even more important than your GRE score, because an SOP can differentiate who you are. It also tests your ability to write about what you want to do in about 1,000 words. Believe me, I do this for a living. It is not easy to write a 1,000-word essay. Most of us have never been challenged to write a 1,000-word essay about ourselves. Worse, to challenged about what we want to do in life. That's very hard to do. Believe me, when you start writing, you'll know it. And that is what and now there are certain schools like UC Davis, University of California, Davis, UC Santa Cruz. Some of the California public schools are asking for another statement beyond the statement of purpose, and they call it the personal history and diversity statement. And this is really tough because they say, essentially they're saying, tell us how your diversity, meaning how you're different, right? Each one of us is different. So some of you are women, I suppose, in this audience. So if you're a woman, how are you different, and how can you contribute to the learning environment at UC Davis? It's not an easy thing to answer. And they say write an essay in about 2 to 3 pages. So I constantly get, I'm in the US, and it's in the middle of the night for these kids here. 1 o'clock in the morning, these kids are struggling. It is about 11:30 or noon for me in the US, and these kids are struggling to write the first paragraph of a 3-page essay because they have no idea what to write. So again, that's the subjective piece, right? So we will come to that in a minute, but many Indian students make fairly expensive mistakes during the admissions process, and one of the reasons we started this forum was to bring awareness to both students and parents about this, right? So the most important mistake that most students make is they go by rankings, right? I have had discussions with students where they tell me, sir, I have admission into a university that is ranked number 71 and also a university that is ranked number 74. Which university should I go to? Again, it goes back to our fascination with numbers. 71, we automatically assume that 71 is better than 74. In fact, 71 may not be better than 74 at all, because really what matters is, the question that you should ask yourself is, during the limited time that you're in the university, what is the chance that I will get an internship? And what is the chance that I will get a full-time job after I graduate? Those are the two questions that should always be on your mind. So if the lower ranked school happens to be closer to a job cluster where there are lots of companies that are willing to hire you for internships and jobs, that school, in my mind, is much better for you than one that is ranked higher, right? So also the question is, which ranking survey do you use? I mean, there are 10 different ranking outfits. So every school is not ranked the same by every outfit, right? So some of you, I'm sure, who are considering going, may have approached other counseling agencies here, and we spent quite a bit of time in India the last 3 years, and some of these people are actually doing illegal. They're illegal by US standards. I mean, it's not illegal to operate a commission-based agency in India, but in the US, you cannot represent a university and a student at the same time. You can only represent one party, right? So a commission-based recruiter is one who does the entire application for you for free or for very little money, and who actually promises that you will get into a particular school, and then you're so happy because the application is filled out by this person and you seem to get in. But you don't know that at the end of your first years of tuition, this agent gets a 5% kickback. So this is no different from your realtor. So the question is, how many of you can vouch and say that your realtor always acted in your best interest, right? Anybody who takes a commission usually is acting in his interest and not necessarily in your interest. So we were appalled to see that commission-based recruiting is very prevalent here in India, in China, in the Philippines, in many countries. This is, by the way, outlawed in the US, right? So be careful about approaching. This is especially true of students who want to go to Australia, New Zealand, and some of the other Commonwealth countries. If you happen to open up the education sections of newspapers twice or three times a year, you will see these elaborate ads taken by these companies where they say, just bring your CV and we will do everything for you. And some of these students, one student who came to me, she went to this place in Bangalore, and in the morning she went with her father, she showed her CV. By evening, she had a provisional admission admission offer from the school. This is a Canadian school. I mean, this is incredible. How can any school evaluate who you are and your worth and your merit in literally, in like 12 hours? So be mindful of that. Okay. So we have very strong. We don't take any commissions from anybody. We are strict advocates of the student. So we don't represent any school, right? Period. Then, as I said to you before, it doesn't matter how well a school is ranked. If you happen to be in a state that is not doing well, economically, then it really doesn't matter what the ranking of the school is. So most of us are very blessed. Those of us who who are in India, we are very blessed because I just came here. I live in the US. I just came here because I'm attending a conference, an IUCEE conference starting tomorrow in Pune. But the thing is, India is a fascinating country. It is probably one of the best countries in the world right now from a point of view of economic growth. And we are so spoiled by the kind of growth where 5.5% growth is considered weak. I mean, if you go back to the election 2 years ago, one of the complaints that the BJP had about the Congress administration was that growth was only 5%. And while I am no big supporter of the Congress party, I was often shocked because 5% growth in places like Japan or in the US, there are people who will kill for that kind of growth. So we are so spoiled because year after year after year, the Indian economy is booming. When you guys go to the US, you will realize that it's a very, 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 very different environment. The economy is not booming in the US. Okay, in India, it's everybody seems to have money in India. In the US, it's difficult, right? So, and then when there are so many foreign students around, every one of them is trying to get that internship or the job. The fact that the economy is not growing as fast can actually have personal consequences to you. So it really matters which state you choose. Okay. Now, look at this graph, right? The dark blue states are the states where there is a lot of economic activity. So think of these states as the equivalents of Gujarat or Karnataka here, okay, or Andhra or maybe Maharashtra. States that are very vibrant in their economies, right? That is the dark blue states. Now, the state in the bottom quintile here, which is minus 1.3 to 0.7, the negative 1.3 tells you that these economies are shrinking. So think of these states as maybe the Meghalays or the Tripuras or the Assams or some of the northeastern states, or the Jharkhands and the Uttarakands, states that have Bihar, states that have a historic, shall we say, record of poor employment, right, poor economic growth. States that are very largely dependent on Indian government investment to keep the states afloat. So you would never voluntarily choose to go and study in those states today, right? Because you know that getting jobs is difficult in those states. So the same concept applies to studying in the US as well. Not every state in the US is the same. And unfortunately, one of the biggest mistakes students make is that for them, an American name, sounding name is so appealing that somebody says, hey, you know what? I got into Mississippi State University, but Mississippi State University is negative 1.2. The state is shrinking in size. So everybody has heard of the Mississippi because we all learned about the Mississippi River. And so we have this fascinating, shall we say, image of the state. But you will really be very unhappy in that state. You need to go to a state like Texas or, some of the other blue states where the economy is growing, because that means that you have better chances of getting internships. It also means that the universities are more vibrant, they have more money. So you can probably get an assistantship and increase your ROI. So, and this is what fascinates me. So we know that those are the states that are good, okay? But look at where most students go, right? 30% of all students study in California, Texas, and New York. That's fine. But out of those three states, only Texas is good. New York State is very poor, right? Go back to the slide. New York isn't doing well at all, right? So here it's okay, but if you look at some of the northern counties of New York as a state is not doing well. There are people who go to Florida to study, and Florida is not a very good state, okay? So you have to know, and they go to Illinois. Illinois is white. So what I'm saying is that you have to really know a lot about the US, before you can simply commit yourself for life to studying in a particular state, right? So, and I will just present this case study to you, and you will kind of see what I am talking about, okay? So suppose one of you gets admission to Mississippi State. By the way, I have nothing against the state of Mississippi. I love the state. I've been there quite a few times, and I love the state. It's a great place to go visit. But anyway, so this is about a case where somebody was offered an MS in mechanical engineering for heat transfer at Bagley. This is a good idea. So going by the traditional way of selecting colleges, it's a great idea. It's ranked very high in the US News and World Report. It's a top 100 school. There's very good research strengths in the areas of heat transfer and fluid flow and mechanics. So it looks great, right? But then if you kind of look under the hood and look at what is happening, under the hood, you will see that the unemployment rate is very bad in the state of Mississippi. And the GDP growth is negative, as we just saw. And the size of the economy is also not very big. So it's a relatively poorer state. So for those reasons, I would avoid going to the state of Mississippi. And then remember, we're talking about somebody who is going there to study a master's degree in heat transfer. Let us ask ourselves, who would hire somebody with a master's degree in heat transfer? Well, the most common industries would be the nuclear energy industry and the heating and air conditioning industry. But look at the projected demand for these engineers, 2,900 jobs for nuclear engineers for the next 10 years. That's it. I mean, compare this to, like robotics engineers or software engineers. Those numbers are like 130,000, 140,000. Here we're talking of 2,900, and most of these jobs, they will require you to have U.S. citizenship, which most of you do not. And so this is a constant question we get in the U.S. We get so many calls from students who are in the third semester of, of their education. They call us and they say, "What do we do?" In fact, I was telling a student just yesterday here that this person has an aerospace master's degree. He's in the third semester, and he's asking me, "What should I do?" And he called me 3 weeks ago. And the truth is that most aerospace jobs require U.S. citizenship, and he's stuck because Boeing doesn't even talk to him. Rockwell doesn't talk to him. So you have to be careful what you study, right? So these are all very costly errors, right? So you have to be careful what you study. You have to be careful where you study, and you have to really plan it out, because all of these things will have consequences for all of you for many years, potentially for your life, right? So we came up with what we call the outcome-based method 3 years ago. It was based on a lot of research that we did, and we have tried it out in India for 3 years. In fact, we have contracts with many Indian engineering colleges, and so where we actually conduct these workshops, we actually meet with students on a regular basis. And what we are saying is that the traditional method of applying to schools is not optimal, right? There is a better way, and it almost guarantees success, right? And in a nutshell, if there is one thing that you can take from this workshop, it is you have to think about the outcome. You have to think about what you do after you graduate. You simply cannot blindly go to a school now. You have to think about what you will do after you graduate. So it has to be outcome based. Your school selection has to be outcome based. Your field of study should be outcome based. If you're doing aerospace now, don't do aerospace for your master's degree. Think of something else. There are lots of, on our website, we give you lots of options. Our website, by the way, is free. So you can go to rawadvisors.com and you will see many of these examples that we have cataloged, where you can potentially consider what is called a professional science master's degree. Remember, the tools that you wear on your tool belt, whether you're a mechanical engineer or an aerospace engineer, the engineering discipline, it teaches us all the same tools. So whether you use the tool to solve an aerospace problem or a geoinformatics system problem, it doesn't matter, right? It still involves design, it still involves analysis. Go where the jobs are. We show you how to do that on our website for free, or you can come to our workshops, or you can learn from us in one-on-one counseling. We look at things like the Department of Labor handbook and see which jobs are hot, right? So that's what we do, right? So we are very heavy advocates of planning early. That is the reason I always tell Sridhar that we should have these kinds of seminars early in the year, January to March or April, because we can get you to start thinking about all the things that you have to do, right? So then there are more advanced workshops, we can do clinics, and then the idea is that planning always pays off, okay? And as I said before, it matters where and what you study, and I've already said all this before. Select a state that has low unemployment, select an occupation and an industry combination that's in demand, okay, and select regions and job clusters with the most promise for these growing occupations, and then only you can use ranking as a way to eliminate schools. So, and I talked about this before. There is the objective piece of your application, and there is the subjective piece. So the subjective piece is the most important part of your application. It is the creative side, right? It defines you beyond a set of numbers. And all of our counselors who work for our firm, they all have a US degree, and all of them are in the US. So they can counsel you much better. They can. I mean, I don't. I involve them only when I have to, but most of the counseling I do myself. And we have been doing this for a while, so we understand how an American university thinks. We've been in the US for 30 years, so we kind of know what we're talking about. In fact, as I was telling Sridhar, we actually wrote a book on how to select US universities. Right, our book is available on Amazon. So, and when students come to me with their SOPs or PHSs, we take a lot of time to review the SOP or PHS. And if I don't have the time, if I give it to somebody else, these people are very good in English. They've been in the country for 15 or 20 years, so they kind of understand what an American is looking for when these SOPs are submitted. Please do not copy somebody else's SOP. Please don't do that. Okay, that's the worst thing that you can do. Most American universities use plagiarism checkers, automatic checkers. So even if, and these checkers can even detect intent. So even if you change words, the actual words, if the meaning is the same, the checkers can find it. And the moment they find that the SOP is not original, your application automatically goes to the bottom of the pile. So it is better to write your own SOP. Okay, so we, as I said, we offer secure video conferencing, and we do it all through the cloud. When we are here in India, we try to be in India twice a year, typically in January and again in September. So when we are here, obviously we can do one-on-one counseling in person, but most of our other counseling sessions, all of them are done, by Skype or by Google Hangouts, and we use Google Apps for Business. It's all cloud. Okay, so but you don't have to hire us. You can learn our methods for free by going to our website, or you can buy our book, and you will see how we talk about college selection, and then you can do it on your own, right? So I will, at this point, I mean, these are reviews from students who have attended our workshops and who have actually engaged with us one-on-one. Our website has many more reviews about what we do and how we have served them. But that is what it is, right? So I will at this point, I'm going to pause and take a sip of water and ask Sridhar to pipe me some questions. Sridhar?
So one of the attendees, Mr. Hitesh, says that big thanks to realize the issues with the real picture of education in the US. And some of them are saying thank you, very good analysis.
Thank you.
What is PHS? Is it similar to SOP?
It is. PHS is very similar to the SOP, except that the SOP is all about the future, right? SOP is about, the way I typically explain to my clients is that a resume is what you have done until now, and an SOP is what you're going to do from now on in life. Many SOPs that I review look like resumes. They only talk about what they have done. But remember, it is the statement of purpose, so it's an objective. They want to see what you want to do going forward. And a PHS is it's called the personal history statement. So it's kind of a kind of your past. Essentially, the PHS is saying, how does your background, how does your personal experience in life, how does that help the learning community in the university that you're going to? So, for example, I just want to throw this out, and this is a very extreme example. It is possible that one of you maybe lost a family friend or a very close friend, or perhaps even a family member in a terrorist attack. Maybe the Mumbai attacks. Now that student can say how that person recovered from the attacks and was able to concentrate and is able to bring this experience to graduate school. I had one student who had lost her father, from a heart attack at a very young age. And she was the only child. How did she take her personal, the problems that she had in her life? How was she able to overcome those issues and still do so well in life? And how will that give her the confidence of contributing to the community, right? So it's a very personal statement, and that is the reason they ask that of you. They know that PHSs cannot be copied, right? You cannot copy PHS. I mean, PHS has to be very personal. And I have other students who have submitted PHSs where they talk about, how as a woman growing up, they were, I don't know, they were in they were not encouraged in studying engineering, but then how they were able to turn that around. And so it's a very personal thing. I hope that answers your question.
Is it easy to get referrals from companies if we know people working there?
Is it necessary or is it easy? Can you repeat the question?
Easy.
Yeah. Um, so the question is it easy to get referrals from people, from companies, if you know them? Now, remember, a recommendation letter has to be specific to you. Okay, this recommendation letters, and many students have this myth. Recommendation letters are not certificates of your character. Okay, so you can only get a recommendation letter from a company if you have actually worked there, if you have interned there, and the person writing the recommendation letter has to talk about what it is that you did and what it is that you learned working for the person in that company. Only then is a referral letter meaningful. Just because you know somebody at a company and that person is willing to write a referral for you, that doesn't really mean anything, because US graduate schools are not looking for character statements.
Will the work experience and published papers play a significant role for admissions in the USA?
Absolutely. The question is, will work experience in published papers, will that show? Absolutely, because not everybody has the privilege of having written a paper. We all know how difficult it is to do the research into current state and do the original research into coming up with a solution and writing a paper, get it peer reviewed, getting it published. These are all extremely difficult things for most people to do. So if somebody has done that and somebody has had a paper published actually in any journal, then that is a way to differentiate yourself, and that goes into the subjective piece of your application, right? That doesn't show up in your GRE score, but that is what you talk about in your resume. That's what you talk about in your SOP, because in your SOP, what you're saying is you're linking your past to the future. So then you can say, I can dream this big. I want to do this great thing, right? I was talking to a student the other day who's been working in robotics, and one of the things that he wants to do is to build robots that to go and work in disaster areas, disaster management. So it's a very laudable goal, right? If he has written a position paper and that has been published, then by all means he should talk about it. And he might be able to get into a top school, although his GRE scores aren't that high, because he has shown that discipline.
Does internship with MNCs in India and reports thereof help?
Does an internship with MNCs in India and what was the second part?
Reports thereof help.
Reports. Yes, MNCs. There is always this bias. You're writing. A reference letter comes from an MNC. If it's like a known MNC like a GE or an IBM or or an Accenture or whatever, right? There is a very good chance that the person reviewing your reference letter knows what that company is, and as a result, the person is going to you always make these associations, right? So just as you make guilty associations, you also make friendly associations. So the idea there in the person's mind is, if an IBM or a GE or a Wells Fargo or a Goldman Sachs has hired you, then obviously you need to have shown some merit. And as a result, why don't we look into your application further? So yes, so to the extent that you're riding the coattail of the MNC's brand as your own, absolutely MNCs will help. Now, if you work for a small company in India that nobody really, or a family-owned business or whatever that not many people have heard about, then it is harder for you to make that connection. And so, in that sense, MNCs are definitely helpful.
If the work experience in same field of degree is commanding than other field working experience for PHS?
For PHS, it doesn't matter. I mean, PHS is a very personal thing, so it doesn't have to necessarily do anything. It doesn't have anything to do with what you do for work. PHS is really very personal, right? So it is something about your diversity that matters, and it is about who you are and not necessarily what you do.
I have taken a year off and tried my hand at entrepreneurship. I now want to do my MS in robotics. Will my application be considered?
Oh, absolutely. The question is, I've taken a year off after graduating and into entrepreneurship, and now I want to consider doing an MS in robotics. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look, being an entrepreneur is everyone's dream. I mean, who doesn't want to go create something and, solve a problem, right? Every one of us has that romantic, right, idea. So Americans are very, very creative. Americans are very entrepreneurial by nature. And so if you have tried a hand in entrepreneurship for a year, and if you can bring some of those experiences in your PHS as well as in your SOP to talk about what difficulties you went through and why you believe that an MS now in robotics will actually help you do better than not pursue entrepreneurship. Again, it's a very personal statement. So between the SOP and the PHS, if you can write a nice story, absolutely it will help you. Remember, it's all about differentiating yourself. 135,000 students go there. How can you stand out from the crowd?
How can a middle class student dream of for quality study in the US if the case is based on financial conditions?
How can a middle class student, dream of studying in the US? Well, you know what? The truth is that most of us are middle class. And when I went to the US in the mid 80s, India was a very poor country. And, unfortunately, Indians now are a victim of the success of India Inc. So, in the eyes of the average American university, their thinking is that they don't have to pay, they don't have to provide, or they don't have to consider the financial need of an Indian student because they are just there to. I mean, if you go to our website, we have lots of examples where American universities are dependent on foreign tuition that you guys pay when you go there, because that money directly goes to subsidizing students that study within the state. So I know this is not an answer that you like to hear, but the fact of the matter is that the American university doesn't really care that you're a middle class student and that you have financial difficulties. Now, having said that, there are other ways. Perhaps you can try to find a foundation scholarship, and I know Tata has some foundation scholarships, so you can do those. But the American school does a typical American school does not hand out scholarships based on need at the graduate level, not anymore.
I am a second year degree student. What is the ideal time for GRE or any competitive exam preparation?
So the question is, I'm a second year GRE student, I'm a second year degree student. What is the time to take competitive exams? So I think I talked about this before. I'm going to go back to the timeline here. And typically you take GRE in the year before you start, right? So we're talking about fall 2016, September 1st is when your semester begins. So you take your GRE and a subject test the previous June. See, this is 2016 June. So if you want to go to the fall semester 2016, you take your competitive exams, GRE and TOEFL, the previous June. So about 15 months before start.
Thank you very much, sir. Those seem to be all the questions, and I have a lot of time.
Okay. So again, thank you, Sridhar, and thank you all for attending. And again, I will try to put up this facing slide. So in case you guys want a copy of this webinar, please please register here, and we will be glad to send you a link where you can download a copy of this presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you again very much. Take care. Bye bye.